And we always appreciate Alyssa on a Tuesday or Wednesday, like last week, or any day of the week. Doesn't matter. How you doing today, Alyssa? What's new?
I'm doing well. Just trying to get some stuff done around the house since it's raining outside. Making me try to be productive, you know. I'd like to be sitting on my couch doing nothing, but trying to be productive.
Yeah, there's only so long you can do nothing. I saw you on DJ Williams' podcast, 4th and 25, right?
Yeah, I've been doing some baseball stuff. You know, I can't not talk about baseball during baseball season. So DJ's had me on a couple times to just talk about the team and the way things are going, which I'm about to record one later on today to kind of, you know, don't hit the panic button. Probably time for like a family meeting kind of situation with this baseball team, in my opinion. And so it's been fun for DJ to let me hop on with him some.
So then in your mind, is it DVH has pulled the team van over? He threatened, if you guys lose another series, I'm going to have to pull the team van over and talk with you. Is that what I'm hearing?
I think so, you know, in you know, the tongue-in-cheek kind of way. But I do think there has to, you know, you sit down and you're like, okay, we're not panicking here. It is baseball. We understand ebbs and flows in this game, but you got to start getting back on the right track, identifying exactly maybe kind of where things are going wrong, maybe mentally with guys, from a confidence standpoint. What does this pitching staff really look like right now? And we talked about it a few weeks ago, you know, talking about, you know, I think we've seen what this team can be, and a few hiccups here and there, and it just feels like they can't get things clicking when they need to. And that's what you do. And I don't think you completely go back to the drawing board, scrap everything, and start all over. But I do think you kind of reevaluate exactly, where guys are right now. And if you need to make some minor changes to the lineup that you think is going to have some success, you do that. And the hard part is, you know, it'd have been nice if they could have figured things out against A&M and Florida, and now you've got Texas coming into town on a short week, the number one team in the country. There's a lot of emotions outside from the fans with this series with Texas, and you've got a baseball team who's just trying to focus and get back to being who we know they can be.
Hey, Alyssa, I want to talk a little bit about your Dolphins and kind of what they did. I think it's pretty smart. You look at when you're trying to build a team, you're trying to win your division. Buffalo scored the most points in the NFL last year. And so what do the Dolphins do? They go out there and get tougher and get some defensive guys. What did you think about their draft?
Yeah, I think they got exactly what they needed, and we talked about it last week. Again, without looking at anything, I was like, they need an offensive lineman, some defensive linemen, defensive guys, and hopefully a quarterback to back up Tua, and it's exactly what they did. I've been a fan of that team for way too long. That's exactly kind of how they operate. And they got that D tackle in the first round, got an offensive lineman. And I like the pick of Quinn Ewers. I like him. He's very similar to Tua in terms of, I think that, you know, if Tua were to get injured, and you got to look back in history, you would assume your backup's probably going to play a game or two the way that just Tua is health-wise. You don't want there to be too much of a change from a stylistic standpoint with your quarterback. And so I think that, you know, Ewers really looks from a skill set very similar to Tua. And so I'm excited to kind of see how that unfolds. I don't think he's the quarterback of the future for the Dolphins, but I definitely think he's a solid backup option. So I was happy to see that. But they definitely, you've got to be able to protect the weapons that you are paying, like Tua and that offense and the weapons, you know, your running backs that you have, like Devin A-Chain, which I know he's a guy that you love. Your wide receivers, all these guys have to be able to execute the offense to score points, and in order to do that, you got to protect them. So
and
they did exactly what I thought they would.
Well, and you got Andrew Armstrong. I think.
Right?
I think he can make that team. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so too. I think he's got a lot of upside, and as a free agent, he'll have to go out there and prove himself. But I think he's got a really good shot to make the roster, or at least make the practice squad. So I'm excited for him. There's not many Arkansas or Florida State guys who go to the Dolphins. That's always my biggest issue with the draft, is I feel like guys at Arkansas or my alma mater, Florida State, they end up going to other teams in the AFC East, and it drives me nuts. So it's nice to have one guy to root for.
You mentioned Florida State. Your head football coach, Mike Norvell, is paired up with Urban Meyer at the Peach Bowl Golf Challenge. It's a charity. It's a charity scramble. It's just that. Listen to some of these. Shane Beamer and Houston Nutt are are paired together as a team.
Okay.
Hugh Freeze and Steve Spurrier, Dan Mullen and Scott Satterfield, Mike Norvell and Urban Meyer, Kirby Smart and Gus Malzahn. That's just a few of them. But Norvell and Meyer, that's a cool one for you, isn't it?
Yeah, that's kind of funny. You know, I'm curious to see what Urban would have to say, if anything, to Mike Norvell, and I'm sure they're going to definitely do some trash talking on the golf course, not just with their golf game, but also, you know, a little FSU-UF rivalry there. You know, I always thought it was funny. I don't know how many people knew this, but like Jimbo Fisher and Will Muschamp, very good friends. And when Jimbo was at FSU and Muschamp was at Florida, I mean, I'm pretty sure they had a beach house together and vacationed together. It's almost very indicative of how Frank Broyles and Darryl Royal had that relationship off the football field. But on the football field, it was strictly business. But Jimbo Fisher and Will Muschamp were good friends, and, of course, coaching at FSU and UF, there was always like, you can't be friends anymore, but you knew the guys were friends behind the scenes. So I bet it's a lot of that on the golf course today.
I want to get back into the baseball team here with you because you mentioned about, you know, what some things to, like, stabilize that you need to pick up. What would be the first thing on your list right now that this baseball team needs in the Texas series?
Offense. And I say that not trying to be like, well, that's obvious, but they just need production offensively, top to bottom, and they need those timely hits. It's not that this offense is lacking. They're just leaving guys on base and not having these timely hits when they needed them, and we saw that against Florida. But I also think, Phil, it's the easiest thing to fix at the moment, right? Like, you could also look at pitching and figure pitching out. But pitching's a little bit more intricate and in-depth, and I don't know if there's necessarily a way to turn that around in 4 days, where if you're like, okay, what are we focusing on? For me, it's like, okay, the offense. How can I get these guys back on track offensively? That's the easiest thing that we can do right now to help our pitching staff while they continue to figure out what they're doing. So I would like to see the offense have a little bit more strength like we've seen at the beginning of the year, and hit the ball the way we know that they can. They just kind of got to get out of their own way a little bit.
You know, you're a journalist, Alyssa, and I was trained as a journalist. I don't know if I view myself that way, but we're trained to look at both sides of an issue. And I'm trying to look at this tax issue the same way, with student athletes not being taxed on their direct payments from NIL money from universities to the school, to the athlete. I can see where you know, average Joe, average Jane will think, well, there's these athletes that are getting their schooling paid for, and you know, they're weighted on hand and foot and all of this, and they're paid now where they weren't paid before, and now they don't have to pay taxes, and I do, and they feel like you know, there's just something that doesn't feel right about that. But you look at the idea that if you want to compete in college sports, and the other bills around states that are around the state of Arkansas that compete in the SEC, and it's not just the SEC, it's Sun Belt, it's OVC, it's Southland Conference, it's the other conferences that also have schools that are within this state. You kind of have to keep up with the Joneses. You don't have to like it, but it's like this is the playing field that you have.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think I can see both sides. And when you look at someone like us, who we're not athletes, we pay taxes, we have bills, all those things, that's just being an adult. And if you're going to make money in the United States, you have to pay taxes on that money. That just feels like the fair way to go about business, because that's what everyone has to do. And it's almost like you're trying to just make things easier on the student athletes, where it's like, don't worry about taxes. We know they're hard. We know they're difficult. We know they're complicated. Don't worry about them. But then you could pull the whole, like, well, are we doing them a disservice by telling them that they don't have to pay taxes on this income right now? But when they become an adult and go into the adult world and collect a paycheck elsewhere, they're going to pay taxes. Why don't you just get these kids ready for the business side of things now instead of waiting after they graduate from college? Does it mean that if they transfer out of state, are they going to have to then pay? Like, how does that all work out? But then I also think on the other side, you could pull the argument of it's almost like state taxes, right? Like the state of Florida, Texas, there aren't state income tax. And so are you saying, okay, well, this is almost like the student athletes not having state income tax on this NIL stuff, because there are states that don't have that. So you can look at it that way as well. I'm really interested to see how this all goes because I do think you're being competitive. It's another leg up. It's another incentive for athletes to come here. It's like, hey, you don't have to pay athlete taxes in the state of Arkansas. Come here and play for us, and you'll keep more of your money. Okay. Like, that sounds really enticing. You know, I've lived in Florida and I've lived in Texas, two states that don't have state income tax, and it was pretty great. I get it. But what are we actually doing here, I think, is another question in terms of in the long run. Does it look pretty and shiny right now, and maybe in a handful of years it starts to kind of not be as beneficial for these student athletes as maybe these lawmakers thought?
BetOnline is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for all your sports betting action. Baseball season is in full swing, and we're into the home stretch for NBA and NHL playoffs. BetOnline has more ways to stay in on the action with the latest odds, news, and scores, even live in-game betting while the games are being played. With the largest selection of odds on everything from the MLB, NHL, and UFC, BetOnline remains the number one online source for all your sports wagering information. In between games, head over to BetOnline Casino with all the top Vegas-style games, including poker and live casino. BetOnline, the game starts here.